Today's podcast of Parenting Great Kids is brought to you by BetterHelp. TeenCounseling.com connects your 13 to 19-year-old with a licensed professional counselor right where they spend most of their time, on their smartphone. Simply complete a short questionnaire and you'll be matched with a skilled therapist in TeenCounseling.com's network of specialists. Then, once you review their credentials and approve, the counselor and your teen will begin communicating directly. Visit teencounseling.com/Meg and help your teen take charge of their mental health. Parenting Great Kids with Dr. Meg Meeker listeners can get 10% off your first month at teencounseling.com/Meg. And by Greenlight. Looking to teach your kids how to be smart with money? Greenlight is a debit card for kids that parents manage with a handy app. With Greenlight, you can set parental controls to decide the exact stores where your kids can shop, receive real-time alerts, automate allowances, and more. The app even teaches kids lessons in trade-off decisions and money management skills. Go to Greenlight today at greenlightcard.com/Meg. That's greenlightcard.com/Meg. For 30 plus years, I've seen every type of child grow up.
Instead of giving me what I wanted, she gave me what I needed, which was truth.
Don't let emotions win. Let truth win.
Do your very best, and you should have a lot of fun while you do it. And the better you get at something, the more fun you're going to have at something.
You moms and dads are wired with everything you need to be a parent to a great kid. Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. This is episode number 91, and I'm your host, Dr. Meg Meeker. My guest today is Dr. Daniel Amen. Dr. Amen is the author of a brand new book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Grades. Dr. Amen has helped millions of people change their brains and lives through his health clinics, best-selling books, products, and public television programs. Dr. Amen is one of America's leading psychiatrists and brain health experts. He's authored or co-authored 70 professional articles and more than 30 books, including New York Times mega bestseller, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. He's appeared on numerous television shows, including Dr. Phil, Larry King, Dr. Oz, and The Doctors. Dr. Amen has appeared in movies, including After the Last Round and The Crash Reel, and was a consultant for the movie Concussion, starring Will Smith. His work has been featured in Newsweek, Huffington Post, ABC World News, and many more. As always, I will share my points to ponder so you can start using them right away. And parents, remember, don't just download the episodes. Click subscribe, because when you do that, you're joining my parenting revolution. We're not only on iTunes, but the PGK podcast is also available in the Google Play Store and on Stitcher. So no matter where you get your podcast, subscribe today and don't miss a single episode. So parents, thanks for listening. This is episode number 91. Stay with us. I want you now to listen in on a conversation I had with Dr. Daniel Amen. I know you're really going to enjoy it. Dr. Amen, thank you so much for being my guest today on Parenting Great Kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this is a book that every parent will want to read. It's called Change Your Brain, Change Your Grades. And what parent doesn't want their kids to change their grades? What do you mean, change your brain? Can you describe that in general terms for our audience?
You know, parents they adore their children generally, and they want to give them every advantage. But what very few people do is actually think about the organ of learning, loving, and behaving, and that's the brain. And what we've discovered at Amen Clinics over the last 30 years, where we look at the brain on a daily basis with imaging studies like SPECT, is that when your brain works right, you work right. Mm-hmm. But when your brain is troubled for whatever reason, head trauma, you have mold in your house, the nutrition's not what it should be, The kids are addicted to video games or social media. When your brain's not right, you are not going to be your best. And so if we want to optimize performance in school, it is critical to first think about optimizing the physical functioning of your brain. And one of the big lessons our brain imaging database has taught us, and we have 160,000 scans on people from 121 countries. So it's not based on a study of 40 people. It's, been my life's work over the last 30 years, is you're not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better by doing the right things, and I can prove it.
Regardless of your age?
Regardless of your age. Our youngest patient is 9 months. Our oldest patient is 105. And I asked the 105-year-old why she was here. And she said, well, I want a better brain. I want to make it to 106 and be able to remember my name. And I was so excited for her. So no matter what your age, and just think about it. If you get a good night's sleep tonight, your brain's actually going to work better tomorrow. But if you smoke pot tonight or have a couple of glasses of alcohol or a fast food, high calorie but low quality meal, your brain's not going to be as good tomorrow. So you can actually feel better fast by doing the right things for your brain.
And you go through that extensively in the book, which is wonderful. So you really go through step 1, step 2, step 3, which is great. Now, when you talk about changing your brain and doing nutritional things and memory exercises and those things that you recommend in your book, and somebody gets happier, we think of that as, well, we've done these things to elevate our mood. So what is the difference between, can you elevate your mood without changing your brain, or do they go hand in hand?
Well, yes, you can elevate your mood and damage your brain with things like porn or cocaine or other things that wear out your pleasure centers. We're in the middle of this vaping epidemic that is so disturbing.
Yes.
But generally, when you do the right things for your brain, and simple things like exercise or omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins, that when you optimize the physical functioning of your brain, your mood's better, your focus is better, your learning is better. And both you and I have seen this sort of epidemic rise of ADD in our society, or ADHD. And I think in large part it's related to the food we eat. There's actually a study out of Holland where they put ADD kids on an elimination diet. So they basically eliminated all the bad food in their diet, and they could eat vegetables and lamb and chicken and rice. And that was sort of about it. But 72% of the kids lost their ADD diagnosis 3 months later. And so food really does matter, along with some of the other habits that are critical to maintaining a healthy brain.
What about lifestyle in kids? What I've seen over the past 20 years is that kids are living an increasingly frenetic lifestyle, and there's a lot of auditory and visual stimulation. Does that have an effect on your brain, and does that have an effect on ADD and mood?
Yes. In fact, the more digital stimulation they get, the more anxious they are, the more depressed they are. The higher incidence of suicide is associated with these digital addictions. I've treated so many kids who've had digital addictions, and it's really hard because you have to get the parents to buy in to limiting those things. But often the gadgets are used as babysitters because parents are tired because they're working so hard to support their families. They end up really feeling tired, and so the gadgets become the babysitters that are not good for the developing brain.
And I've read studies too that even in men in their 20s who are on video games, for instance, for a number of hours, you can actually see some brain changes. The brain is just an incredible organ. Talk to us, please, about the different types of brain, because you go through this in your book, and basically there are 5 primary brain types. Would you explain those, please?
Yeah, based on our brain imaging work, what we realized is one size doesn't fit everybody. We have their balanced brains, which are pretty much just healthy overall, and that applies to maybe 40% of the population. There are spontaneous brains. Those are our impulsive, short attention span kids. There are persistent brains. These are people that are sort of like a dog with a bone. Their frontal lobes work too hard, and they're really good. I mean, some of my Olympic athletes are the persistent, but it can also go with worry and rigidity, inflexibility. There are my sensitive brains, where their emotional brain really works hard, puts them at more risk for depression. And then there are the cautious kids, or the cautious brains, that tend to struggle with anxiety. And all of the 5 types have strengths and vulnerabilities. But knowing your type, then for me as a child psychiatrist, I want to go, oh, well, let me use these supplements. And I tend to use supplements before I use medication, just because they're less expensive, they have virtually no side effects when used properly, and they work. And if they don't, then I'll use medicine. But in my mind, in medical school, you remember they taught us first do no harm, use the least toxic, most effective treatment. And for most kids, that's lifestyle interventions and nutrients. But there are kids who will need medication. It's just never the first thing I think about. So knowing your type, and we actually have a free online assessment, brainhealthassessment.com. So if people go to brainhealthassessment.com, they can take this free test, learn their type, their child's type, their husband's type, and then go, oh, because if you have a spontaneous brain, but you're taught by a teacher, or you have a mom who has a persistent brain, there's going to be lots of fireworks in that relationship. And so everybody knowing their brain type can be really helpful.
Parents, I hope you're enjoying my conversation with Dr. Daniel Amen. We need to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of our conversation with Dr. Amen. KiwiCo creates hands-on projects for kids of all ages to make learning about STEAM fun. This holiday season, a KiwiCo subscription makes the perfect gift for every young explorer, engineer, and the artist in your life. KiwiCo is defining the future of play by making it engaging, enriching, and seriously fun. They create hands-on projects and toys designed to expose kids to concepts in STEM, art, and design. Their mission is to help kids build creative confidence and problem-solving skills and have a blast while doing it. There are 7 lines to choose from, catered for different age groups and topics, like the Panda Crate for babies or the Eureka Crate for kids 14 and older. Each box comes with all the supplies needed for that month's project, plus detailed kid-friendly instructions. KiwiCo projects are available via flexible monthly subscriptions or for individual purchase. They have gifts for kids of all ages, so there's something for everyone on your list. Friends, I love KiwiCo. I have grandkids from ages 1 to 6, and I have used KiwiCo projects for each and every one of the kids. They're fun, easy to use, and best of all, everything you need comes in a box delivered to your front door. KiwiCo is offering you the chance to get your first month for free. To redeem this offer and learn more about their projects, visit KiwiCo.com/Meg. Have you heard about this company making stylish shoes out of recycled plastic water bottles? ROTHY'S has quickly grown to a most loved, gotta have them brand. I will tell you, friends, I've been wearing ROTHY'S for the past year, and I love them. I can wear them to the office. I can wear them around the house. I can wear them doing chores. They are washable. They are gorgeous. And best of all, I like the fact that they're made from plastic water bottles. ROTHY'S are the perfect everyday shoes for life on the go. They're stylish and comfortable, and they come in an ever-changing array of colors, prints, and patterns and styles, like sneakers, loafers, points, and more. Plus, since ROTHY'S are seamlessly knit using thread made from plastic water bottles, they're ultra comfortable as soon as you slip them on. Better yet, ROTHY'S has diverted over 35 million water bottles from landfills already. Another major bonus, they're fully machine washable, and it's like getting a fresh pair every laundry day. Check out all the amazing styles available right now at rothys.com/Meg. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are free, so there's no risk, no worries, no reason not to try. Go to rothys.com/Meg, rothys.com/Meg to get your new favorite flats. Comfort, style, and sustainability. These are the shoes you've been waiting for. Head to rothys.com/Meg today. We have historically thought of this, and maybe it's very different. That's why I want you to explain that what you're talking about is personality type. There are a lot of different personality tests out there. But am I understanding you correctly when you say it isn't necessarily personality, a psychological thing, but it's more of a brain function kind of a thing? And what's the difference there?
You know, that's just a great question, because most people think personality, well, it's sort of what I'm born with. And what we discovered, personality is a direct reflection of how your brain works or struggles in how it works. And that when you optimize it, people go more toward being balanced than not. And I think, most of the neuroscientists will look at personality characteristics like conscientiousness and go, there's really an underlying brain pattern to that. So, for example, if your frontal lobes are healthy, so the front third of your brain is the most human part of our brain. It's involved with executive functions, and it's 30% of the human brain, but only 11% of the chimpanzee brain, 7% of your dog's brain, 1% of the mouse's brain. And I think of it sort of like the boss at work. And when the prefrontal cortex is healthy, you can focus, your follow-through is good, your organization, planning, empathy, forethought, and learning from mistakes, all of that's healthy. But when it's too low, it's sort of like you don't have a break in your brain and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind, which can cause all sorts of trouble. But when your brain works too hard, when the frontal lobes work too hard, you worry, you hold grudges. If things don't go your way, you get upset. And so balancing this part of your brain is so important. which is why I'm not a fan of hitting soccer balls with your head or playing tackle football or putting your brain at risk for concussions, because most commonly in concussions, 91% damages your frontal lobes, which is in fact actually worse in girls than in boys, because 90% of female IQ is in their frontal lobes, where for males it's more widely distributed. So protecting your brain is absolutely critical.
So no tackle football for all of the teenage boys out there. No, I wholly agree with you. Let's talk about neurochemistry for a minute, if we can. Because, when I was in medical school a long time ago, we didn't have a lot of the antidepressants we have now. And we are taught as physicians, probably the lay community as well, is that a lot of the issues that we have with mood, concentration, so on and so forth, are related to the neurohormones in our brain. So what's the interplay between neurohormones and brain function?
It's a really interesting question because it's actually not been proven. And yes, things like depression can run in families, and maybe it's low levels of serotonin or low levels of dopamine. But our imaging work has taught us that when I get the health of your brain right, your mood's better, your focus is better, that this dramatic rise in depression. Did you know that 36% of teenage girls will experience a major depression during their adolescence? When you and I were in medical school, that was nowhere near. I mean, it was like a quarter of that. And, we've not all of a sudden developed a Prozac deficiency in our society. What's happening is our vitamin D levels have plummeted. Why? Because the dermatologists won. They made us afraid of the sun. But the problem is we were evolved or made in the sun, and low levels of vitamin D are associated with depression. We now have a dramatic rise in omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies. When I do an omega-3 index, I do that on most of my patients. I am horrified by the low levels of omega-3 and the higher levels of unhealthy omega-6 fatty acids in the blood, and that's pro-inflammatory. So by eating less fish and having more processed food diets, we're increasing inflammation, which we know is associated with depression, autism, and dementia. And so too often what's happened is because psychiatrists and pediatricians make diagnoses of depression without any biological information, we're wholesale giving antidepressants to children that we've not really sort of fixed their diet or their level of exercise or the nutrient deficiencies they've had. And what we now have is a mess in our country where the use of psychiatric drugs in children has more than quadrupled since the 1980s, but our effectiveness has gone down. In fact, suicide, since 1999, suicide has increased 33%, while cancer has declined 27%. Why? And I believe it's because we're working on the wrong paradigm, that making diagnoses based on symptom clusters. I mean, what other medical specialty does that, right? Cardiologists don't do it. Gastroenterologists don't do it. Orthopedic doctors don't do it. But psychiatrists have been condemned because of our tradition to guess, and our effectiveness literally has not changed since the 1950s. And I'm not okay with that. That we need a revolution in brain health if we're ever going to get on top of these epidemic rises in anxiety, depression, and suicide among young people.
In defense of those who are out there, doing primary care, one of my frustrations, and I know my colleagues' frustrations, is this, that if we see a child with depression, say a 13-year-old, and we look at their lifestyle, we look at their diet, we look at, video games, we look at maybe the child is vaping or whatever, we become discouraged because trying to get parents to help facilitate change in the child's lifestyle, which if the parent doesn't, it's almost impossible. It's like treating obese kids. If we can't get the parents on board, we don't stand a prayer. And so I think sometimes in an effort to say, okay, well, I want to help in some way, we give medications. And so, there's this sort of tug and pull out there. Let's say you had a 13-year-old boy come into your office with saying, I am depressed. Where would you start and where would you hope to end, and how long would that take?
So I have an example. I have a 15-year-old girl in my office this week, and she was crying for hours at a time. And so the first thing I do, or what are the biological causes of depression, is I send her to the lab. I measured her omega-3 index, her C-reactive protein, her CBC, and her thyroid function. And so the first thing I do is I make sure there's not either a nutrient deficiency or a biological cause, because thyroid disorders have gone way up in children as well, which may be related to the toxins we ingest, which is a whole conversation. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I would do, head-to-head, antidepressants versus omega-3 fatty acids, equally effective. So one study from New Zealand, Prozac study, 51% of the people got better on Prozac who were depressed. 58% of people got better on omega-3 fatty acids. So the next thing, labs, omega-3 fatty acids, exercise, head-to-head against Zoloft, equally effective. So I tell the parents, and I always I'm sure I'm like you, I give people choices, right? It's about informed consent. It's not about me telling them what to do. But if you can walk with your child 45 minutes, 4 times a week, walk like you're late, that is equally effective. In fact, at the end of 10 months, it's more effective. And then I have a kid's book, and I talk about this in Change Your Brain, Change Your Grades. We have to start teaching kids how to manage their mind. And so I went to my whiteboard. We wrote down 10 of her negative thoughts, and I taught her how to correct. I call it kill the ants. The automatic negative thoughts that steal your happiness. It's a form of cognitive therapy I developed, and it's cognitive therapy head-to-head against antidepressants have been shown to be effective, similarly effective. So fish oil, exercise, cognitive therapy while I'm getting the labs back. And then, depending on their brain type, I'm going to do nutrients. So if they're the persistent, they're the worried, rigid, and flexible type, I'm going to use serotonin, precursor, 5-HTP and saffron. If it's mostly they're anxious, I'll use magnesium and GABA and theanine, all simple, inexpensive, geared to their brain type. And if I was a pediatrician, and I almost was a pediatrician because I adore children, I would have these sheets in my office, just some simple stuff that I would go, we could do this, or there's a possibility of medication. But, when we do informed consent on medication and talk about side effects, nobody ever tells you that if I start your child on medication, it's going to affect their ability to get into the military, and it's going to affect their ability to get insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance, disability insurance, because psychiatric medications are sort of frowned upon by the insurance industry. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, first do no harm. And all the psychiatric medications in children, all of them, have black box warnings. Why? Because if you give it to the wrong person, you could hurt them. And I'm like, first do no harm. How can I do this? Now, that doesn't mean I don't prescribe stimulants. I do. If the natural things don't work for ADD, I'll totally use Adderall or Ritalin, but never the first thing I think about.
Mm-hmm. So omega-3 fatty acids. So do you tell people or kids to get that through their diet, or do you ever use supplements? And if you use supplements, what is the appropriate level? Because I've read some things that, you need 5,000 milligrams or something of the DHA and the EPA combined. What is your recommendation for how much omega-3 a child should get?
Yeah, now that's way too high.
Okay.
If I'm trying to repair significant brain damage, I might use that high. But the studies are actually pretty consistent that about 2,000 milligrams of a combination of EPA and DHA will be effective. But what's interesting, and a lot of people don't know, that for ADD and depression, DHA is actually not very effective at all. EPA is effective. Mm-hmm. But for anxiety and memory, DHA is better. So you have to know what you're treating. And pretty much I like a 60% EPA, 40% DHA blend, which is what's natural in fish oil. And if you can get that combination to be about 1,000 milligrams for most kids, but 2,000 milligrams if you're trying to really help mood disorders or anxiety disorders, then I think that is safe. It makes the most sense. It's never going to hurt anybody. And it really fits with first do no harm. But, it's not just giving fish oil. It's also getting their lifestyle better and teaching them, as we do in Change Your Brain, Change Your Grades, to not believe every stupid thought you have. And it's a skill that they actually should have taught us in second grade. And we have a high school course called Brain Thrive by 25. It's actually online. And we love the course. We've had about 15,000 kids take it. And they say it's the best course they've ever had, because what they're learning is how to love and care for their brain. Because I know, sort of the idea many parents have is, I don't really have influence over my teenagers. And I find if you're not bonded with your child, you don't have influence. That's absolutely true. But if you spend time with them, if you listen to them, and the really hard thing for parents to hear is every day you are modeling health, or you're modeling illness. So if you really want your child to get healthy, you have to get healthy first, because you're modeling their behavior, right? Kids don't do what we tell them to do. They do what we show them to do through our own behavior.
Many times I get questions from parents about, attachment in kids and how much they should work. Often I have a couple where mom works and dad works, or single moms who work 8 hours a day. And that's always a struggle for them and for me, because as a pediatrician, I know it's best if kids have the more exposure they have to mom or dad, and the more attachment they can have in those early years, the healthier their long-term emotional and mental health will be. So do you have any recommendations for parents as far as, I know this is putting you on the spot, it's hard, but I get asked this question a lot. As far as how parents, should they work? Should they not work? If they do work, how much should they work? What do you say to parents struggling with that?
Well, unfortunately, it's an economic requirement for many families that both parents work. So this is what I recommend, is something called special time. It doesn't take a lot of time, but what it takes is consistent time. And special time for each parent spend 20 minutes alone with your child a day
Mm-hmm.
doing something the child wants to do. And during that time, no commands, no questions, no direction. It's just time to be in their space, and it's time to keep your mouth closed so you can listen to what's going on in their head. And so when I teach special time together with active listening is basically when the child says something, don't give them your opinion on it. Just repeat back what you hear. That encourages them to keep talking. And I have seen those two things, special time and active listening, dramatically change the quality of relationships in kids. I wrote a book chapter on this once called How to Make Your Child a Republican, a Democrat, or anything you want. And it's basically, if you're bonded to your child, they will pick your values. If you're not bonded to your children, they will pick the opposite values, just to irritate you. And so that bond, and it doesn't take a lot. I had this 10-year-old boy who was acting out, who was really troubled, had really bad behavior. And his dad was an Oakland police officer. And the dad was type 3, pretty rigid. And I told him about special time. And he was just desperate to help his child. And he did exactly what I said. And within 2 months, they're playing golf. They love each other. Anthony, the boy's behavior is so much better. And, that case has just stuck with me, is when you're connected emotionally, kids act better. They eat better. They do better in school.
Absolutely. And the thing that's remarkable about that, which I really want to encourage parents to do, is that it really doesn't take that much. What you said, active listening and sort of being present with the child, 20 minutes, no agenda. To a child, that's huge. The 20 minutes that may feel like 30 to you, for a child, it changes their whole world. So do you think by doing that, going back to the brain changes and the effect that you as a parent can have on your child's brain, doing things like that, 20 minutes a day, does that have an effect on brain development in kids?
It does, because it decreases their child's stress levels. And people don't know that stress damages the brain. And so if children are lonely, if they're disconnected, if they're unhappy, the stress that goes along with that hurts the learning centers and the mood centers in the brain. And parents also need to know that your child's brain's actually not fully developed until they're about 25. And it's the frontal lobes that are the last thing to develop. And so really doing what you can to stay bonded and connected to them. And oh, by the way, if the parents are smoking pot, the kids are more likely to smoke pot. And why is that a problem? Because, everybody now thinks pot's innocuous. Well, one, it's not. And the kids who smoke pot have a higher incidence of anxiety, depression, and suicide as young adults. And it damages and delays development. And so I'm happy that they're not putting people who smoke pot in jail. That's just a flawed policy. But to say that it's innocuous is just not true, given what I've seen in the brain. I published a study on 1,000 marijuana smokers. Virtually every area of their brain was lower than non-smokers.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because, with the legalization of medical marijuana, it's a nightmare for physicians, because I've never heard a physician say that it's good for you. Everybody says it's bad, and yet there's so much pressure out there, particularly on kids. Dr. Amen, I sure appreciate you being with us today. Your book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Grades, I hope will be on the New York Times bestseller list, like many of your other books. And I really appreciate all the insight that you've given us today.
Thanks, Meg. What a joy to meet you. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Now on to my points to ponder. 1, start omega-3s. This is one of the easiest and best things that you can do for your kids. It not only helps brain health, but heart health and other organs as well. Make sure that the omega-3s don't come from flaxseed. They need to come from fish. There are many forms that you can buy now: gummies, capsules, liquid, and many more. Go to your pharmacy and choose one. Then read the label carefully. If your child is 5 years of age or older, you want to look for 2 ingredients, EPA and DHA. And when they're added together, they should equal 500 to 1,000 milligrams. This is a lot, so do the best you can. Start with a low dose and gradually work your way up to a higher dose. I encourage you to give it to your kids at night with yogurt or a light snack, just in case they have tummy issues. 2, kill the ants. This is a terrific mnemonic that you can teach your kids. Remember, it means automatic negative thoughts. Even young children have simple negative thoughts like, I'm bad, no one likes me, I'm stupid. One of the best ways to teach your child to stop those negative thoughts is to kill the ants. To help him identify when he says something negative about himself or thinks something negative about himself. When he does this, stop him and say, no, those thoughts aren't true, or no, the words you just said are not true. If he says, I'm stupid, you say, no, you're not stupid. That's a wrong thought. The truth is, you're very smart. Tell him that these thoughts come into everyone's minds at some times, but they bring us all down. Then help him write down his thoughts, and whenever he hears them in his head or says them out loud, he's to beat those thoughts back. Eventually, this changes the way he thinks. Incidentally, this technique takes time, but it really works, and it's good for parents too. 3, play age-appropriate games. One of the best things you can do for your child's imagination and brain development is to play games like I Spy, Candyland, memorization games, or if they're older, code names. Games not only stimulate the brain, but they bring you closer to your kids. And as the game progresses, you'll learn a lot about your child's personality. Is she competitive? Does she always need to win? Does she cheat? These may help you identify some of the ants that she may be struggling with, and then you can help her shift negative thoughts. Games are also good because it allows your kids to see a fun side of you, and it keeps them away from screens. Friends, I'm not going to be able to answer a question today because I wanted to take so much time with Dr. Amen. But remember, I always want to hear from you and interact with you. You can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Meg Meeker MD, or if you have a question, send it to askmeg@megmeekermd.com. I want to thank my guest, Dr. Daniel Amen. To find out more about Dr. Amen, you can go to danielamenmd.com. Once again, that's danielamenmd.com. And make sure to check out his latest book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Grades. You can also follow Dr. Amen on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter when you search for Dr. Daniel Amen on your internet browser. So now let's recap my points to ponder. 1, start omega-3s. 2, kill the ants. 3, play age-appropriate games. So until next time, parents, remember, great kids are raised, not born.
Hey, this is Bobby, producer of Meg Meeker's Parenting Great Kids podcast. Thanks for listening, and because of your dedication to raising great kids, Dr. Meg's Parenting Revolution has grown to over 3 million downloads. Head on over to Facebook and Twitter and follow @MegMeekerMD and check out what's new at megmeeker.com. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter to stay updated and get information about giveaways. Don't forget to share the podcast with other parents, subscribe so you won't miss anything, and leave us a review so we know how we're doing.